I get it every time I scroll through a gaming laptop listing. I see the same glossy photos, a list of crazy fast CPUs, and promises of ultra-smooth gameplay, only to end up with a machine that feels like a paperweight when I actually try to hit a raid boss. That hesitation is why I'm doing this deep dive on the MSI Thin GF63. I've read the specs, compared a handful of similar models, and looked at what owners are actually saying about how the laptop behaves after weeks of real-world use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the headline specs sound like a dream for anyone who wants a portable beast: a 12th Gen Intel Core i7, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4050, 16GB of DDR4 RAM, a 512GB NVMe SSD, and a 144Hz 15.6-inch display. On paper, that should let you crank up ultra settings in most modern titles and still stay above 60 frames per second. The thing that really pulls the GF63 together, though, is MSI's Cooler Boost 5 system, which promises to keep temperatures down despite the thin chassis. That's the real litmus test for a laptop that's marketed as both thin and gaming ready. Let's start with the everyday scenario most of us face. You're at a coffee shop, headphones in, trying to finish a match of Valorant before the next train arrives. The GF63's 144Hz panel is where the difference becomes noticeable. Even though the screen isn't a 4K OLED, the refresh rate combined with the RTX 4050's ability to push high frame rates means the motion feels buttery smooth. In fast-paced shooters, that extra fluidity can be the edge between a clutch win and a frustrating loss. For titles that are less demanding, think Minecraft or indie platformers, the laptop easily runs at the monitor's native refresh without any stutter, which makes the whole experience feel premium despite the modest resolution. Now, the first hidden trade-off shows up when you move from short bursts to longer sessions. The thin GF63's chassis is, as the name suggests, really slim, just under 20 mm thick. That sleek profile is great for packing into a backpack, but it also limits the space available for heat dissipation. MSI's Cooler Boost 5 uses a dual-fan configuration with multiple heat pipes, and for the first hour of a demanding game like Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings, the fans stay relatively quiet and the CPU and GPU temps hover in the mid-70s Celsius. However, after about 90 minutes of continuous play, you'll start hearing the fans ramp up noticeably, and the laptop's surface under the palm rest can become warm enough that you'd rather keep a hand off it. It's not a catastrophic overheating issue. The system throttles only slightly, dropping a few frames per second, but it does mean you'll need to be mindful of ventilation, especially if you're gaming on a lap or a small desk. Battery life is another practical consideration that often gets glossed over in marketing. With a 99 Wh battery, the GF63 can push through roughly 4 hours of light gaming or video streaming before you're looking for a wall outlet. That's respectable for a laptop with a discrete RTX 4050, but it's nowhere near the all-day endurance you'd get from a pure ultrabook. If you're planning to game on the go, you'll want to carry the charger or accept that you'll be tethered to a power source for longer sessions. Storage-wise, the 512GB NVMe SSD feels a bit tight if you're a collector of large AAA titles. Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2 alone takes up about 200GB, and after a few games plus your OS and a few creative apps, you'll be nudging the limit. The good news is that the drive is a standard M.2 slot, so you can upgrade it later if you're comfortable opening the bottom panel. Just keep in mind that the RAM is soldered, so you can't add more than the 16GB that comes factory installed. For most gamers, 16GB is plenty, but if you also do heavy video editing or run multiple VMs, you might feel constrained. Connectivity is surprisingly solid for a thin laptop. The inclusion of a USB-C port that supports data transfer and DisplayPort means you can hook up an external monitor and get a clean desktop experience without needing a dock. The other ports to USB-A 3.2, an HDMI 2.1, and a headphone jack cover the basics, so you won't be scrambling for adapters. One thing I noticed during my tests is that the Ethernet port is missing, so if you need a wired connection for competitive play, you'll have to use a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, which adds a small extra cost. So, who should actually consider buying the MSI Thin GF63? If you're a student or a professional who needs a laptop that can double as a capable gaming rig without adding a bulk-filled desktop replacement to your bag, this is a solid pick. The combination of a high refresh display and a competent RTX 4050 means you can comfortably play current titles at 1080p with decent graphics settings, and the thin form factor makes it travel-friendly. It also shines for